spent a chunk of this week thinking about faith, the nature of faith. And I know what you're thinking. You're a preacher. I mean, that's preacher stuff, right? That's what preachers do all the time. Actually, we don't. I'm just going to be honest with you. There are lots of other things on our mind. But this week in particular, I've been thinking a lot about the nature of faith, the role it plays in our lives. I had the opportunity, really the delight, to have 3 meetings this week, 3 conversations with 3 different people, all centering around their faith, where they are in their journey of faith, how they're finding a way, because faith is a journey, right? I mean, it's a path that we walk daily in our lives. And for each of these people, faith played a different yet no less important role. Faith matters a lot to us. Whether we acknowledge it or not, it's a part of our lives. It impacts our lives. The trouble is, though, you can't prove faith, can you? I mean, you can't have scientific evidence of what the nature of faith is. You can measure its impact. For example, I saw a study this week that something like 70-some-odd% of people who say that faith has an important role in their life say that they are happier and that they're filled with hope. Those 2 things through this study is argued that they go together. The deeper your faith is, the more of a priority faith has in your life. It turns out it has positive effects on us. But still, that doesn't help to measure what is faith. You can't prove it. It's a trust. It's there even though you can't see it. It's there even though you can't touch it. Frederick Buechner once said that faith is better understood as a verb instead of a noun. It's not something you have, it's something you're always doing. It's a part of your life. He's not here today. Dr. Ralph Bailey is our senior pastor emeritus here at Trinity Church. He was pastor of this church 2 pastors ago. Ralph had this great invitation that he would say often at the end of services, I've learned, that he would invite you to join the church. And he would say, if you are looking for an arena in which to work out your faith, this is the church for you. I like that, an arena in which to work out your faith. Because it is a working out. It is a journey. It is something that we struggle with. The writer, the letter to Hebrews, talks about the nature of faith. We know a few things, at least, that they point us to. Faith and hope go hand in hand. We're going a little bit deeper in Scripture, we said this summer, and I really was trying to kind of hone in because the Hebrews is just a wonderfully written, beautiful, but very deep, poetic book. Faith, the writer says, is the substance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. Hope and faith go together. I looked back at that word hope. It turns out that's a pretty important word for me this year. I don't even know why. But I looked back, I did a little word search, and I keep my sermon notes and things that I do on the computer program, and I did a search, and I have preached, it turns out, on the theme of hope in some way or another 12 times already this year. Sometimes this whole sermon was on hope. Sometimes it's just kind of this sub-point that I'm bringing in. But it turns out that's been a pretty important theme this year. Hope. The substance of things hoped for is faith. The conviction of things you can't quite see. So hope is a big part of faith. It kind of reminded me, I don't know if you're a fan of Peanuts cartoons, but I like them. There's an old Peanuts cartoon, and it's a baseball one. It's probably why I really liked it. But Lucy's playing right field, and the fly ball comes, and she's looking up, and she loses it in the sun and misses the ball. And she comes in, and Charlie Brown is the manager, and she's trying to explain, her error. And she says, I really hoped I was going to catch that, but hope got in my eyes. I kind of like that line, though. Hope got in my eyes. How would we see the world differently if every day we woke up and hope got in your eyes? Would it change the way you went into your day? Would it change the way that you saw and related to each other? Would it change your attitude going into work or going into whatever you're doing for the day if hope got in your eyes? That's a big part of the journey of faith, to live every day with hope in our eyes. Such a deep, rich, wonderful passage. 3 things jumped out at me. You're hearing the writer to the Hebrews kind of recounting their history to them, which is an important thing to do. You know, what better way to kind of convict us on how to live in the future than to remind us of a past that is fruitful and filled with lessons of how we could live? Maybe we've fallen away from it, and our past can often inform our future in a really helpful way. 3 ways that faith has an impact, the writer says, in your life. One is that when the path seems unclear in life, you have faith. Abraham and Sarah are promised a land. They don't quite know where it is. They don't quite know how to get there. But they go. They go. It's crazy, right? You don't know where you're going, but you do it anyways. And we do that in life through faith. Maybe it's a new decision and we decide on a life change and we say, I don't quite know where this is heading, but I'm going to go anyways. Maybe it's in light of losing someone we love and we're trying to find new life in their absence. And we don't really want to go, but you have to. And we wake up every day and we put one foot in front of the other, not quite knowing where we're going. But we have faith that God is with us. Faith can help us navigate life when it's not always clear, like Abraham and Sarah. Faith, it turns out, can also be with us when life seems impossible. Abraham and Sarah are very old. The writer is reminding the people, very old. She's barren. She can't have children. She's tried and tried and tried to no avail. And they have a son named Isaac, which is really important because Isaac literally means laughter, is the meaning of that name. And he gets that name because here are these 2 people past their childbearing years. She doesn't think she has any childbearing ability. And yet, God brings life out of that which seems dead. And what can you do except delight in laughter? And it's that way in our life too. We've all been there to some degree or another where it just, whatever it is, there's no way it's going to happen. There's no way it can happen. There's no way this can get any better. There's no way we can come on the other side of it. There's no way that I can live into what I need to do. And yet, through faith, that which is impossible becomes possible. And I think it's a good reminder that we are the beneficiaries of grace. Because that's what that is. That's grace. That's a gift. That which is impossible through faith, by the power of God, is made possible in our life, not by our own doing. It's a reminder that we can't live by our own wits and willpower alone. That we have to lean on God. That there are things beyond our abilities. And yet, faith is the trust that God is always with us and that God will always be with us. Faith can make a way when things seem impossible. The third lesson I think that we can get from this passage is that faith can help us along the way when things are incomplete. We're told that the ancestors all lived and died in the faith, and they all longed for this land, a heavenly land. The kingdom of God is what they long for. That they know that life as we see it right now is not what it ought to be or what it should be, but there's something that could be better. And they have faith that through God they can get there. It's not yet complete. This is what compels us to give of ourselves, by the way. I reminded you, I think last week, St. Augustine said that hope has 2 beautiful daughters, anger and courage. Anger, that the world's not as it should be, and courage to do something about it. Faith is what gives us the hope to courageously step out and do something. The world's not what it should be. We know that. God knows the news reminds us of that constantly, doesn't it? And we can sit in despair and we can wring our hands and we can just get down in the dumps about it. Or we can make the decision that with God's help, we will devote ourselves in whatever way possible to get up every day and to leave the world that night a better place than we found it that morning. That you can have an impact in your life wherever you are, in whatever way possible. And it may seem small, and it may seem insignificant in light of all the terrible things happening in the world. But I'm telling you that little by little, you are spreading light in the darkness. And light shall not be overcome by darkness. That through faith, you are being called into amazing things, maybe even new things. I mentioned the 3 conversations that I had with different people asking and talking about their faith. I was reminded this week through those conversations that one of the greatest delights in my life is that we're all called into ministry, by the way. You know that, right? Through baptism, everybody's called into ministry. We call it the priesthood of all believers. But just because I'm an ordained pastor makes me no differently called than you. We just have different callings. Through my calling to be an ordained pastor, I get the delight that my calling into ministry largely is to help you find your calling. That I can journey with you, walk alongside you, hopefully encourage you, maybe even empower you a little bit to find your calling to ministry. And that calling may shift depending on what season of life you're in. We may go through a calling and it'll end and then we'll get a new one. Who knows? But every single one of you are called by God. The question is, through faith, will we answer? Through faith, will we answer that call to give of ourselves in new ways? Now, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't offer you at least a couple tangible ways that you could begin to struggle through what this calling could be. One is, I'm very excited that we're going to launch next month a class I'm calling Alpha. I know about enough Greek to get myself in trouble. And so Alpha is the name of the class, which is the first letter of the Greek alphabet. It is the beginning class. The Alpha class has a simple theme to it. It's 3 Sundays. We're going to talk about the church. We're going to talk about you and your gifts. And we're going to talk about how we could work together to help you live into your calling to ministry. But every person, I hope, should find an interest in this class to maybe look at, the fun one's going to be looking at yourself. Do a personality test, talk about gifts and graces, and maybe there are things that you've always wanted to try and you never really thought you could, but maybe through this class you'll hear God calling you to try. Alpha is a great way to start in your faith journey, or restart in your faith journey if you've slowed down a little bit. But I hope you'll take advantage of that when you hear more about it next month. Another way you could, who knows, in this room could be called, is I mentioned that we are starting a youth program. It's been years since this church has had a youth program, but we're going to try it. We're going to start it. We've got enough youth that we've got a critical mass, and we're going to do this thing. I'm really excited because for me, youth was a really important part of my life growing up. Sometimes God knows where I might be. I mean, youth was there when my parents got divorced. Youth was there when I struggled with being an awkward teenager. Youth was there when girls dumped me. Youth was always kind of this fixture in my life, a haven that I could go to. I'm grateful to my mom because when I was on restriction, youth was the one place she would let me go. So I loved youth because I stayed on restriction a good bit. Couldn't go anywhere that weekend, but I got to go to UMYF on Sundays. Now, some 20 years later, I look back and I realize in so many ways, the youth program probably saved my life. So the question is, are you being called to invest in the life of a young person? Do you have a similar experience of how much you loved youth, and maybe God is calling you through your passion and graces and gifts to reach out and to love a young person so that maybe 20 years from now they look back and they remember you as being that foundational presence in their life? One of the things we're trying with our children's ministry is to create these touch points in life where every kid, our goal is to have every kid to have 5 adults touch their life in a significant way. And this is one of those ways. So maybe you pray over the next few weeks that maybe you want to be one of the volunteers that on Sunday morning you kind of come with some rowdy teenage boys. Maybe guide them a little bit, laugh, cry, listen to their crazy stories. But you get to be the person in their life that has a significant impact. Maybe that's a calling that God's calling you to have faith to live into. And maybe it's beyond the local church. I don't want to just seem like I'm just trying to, drum up volunteer support. Maybe there's something in the world, in the community, some significant way that you've seen a problem or a need or something. You say, I think I could do something to at least bridge the gap in that. Faith is what calls you to do it. Faith is what guides you in the way you live daily. I'll kind of leave you with this. Henry Nouwen tells a wonderful story of how faith was revealed to him to understand it. Nouwen says that he was at the circus of all places. The circus, he learns about faith. But he's watching a trapeze act. The acrobats, and they're swinging and, flipping and catching and going and all this stuff. And he's just mesmerized by it. And so after the show, he goes up to one of the trapeze artists and it's just amazing, what you're able to do. And the guy who's doing the flipping, he says, it's funny because all of you think I'm the star of the show because I'm the one flipping and doing and all that. He says, you know who the real star of the show is? My catcher. Without the catcher, I'm done. He said, the only thing I have to do is let go and trust Joe, who's going to catch me. That's faith. The freedom to not try quite so hard to navigate on your own, but to wake up every day with an open heart and an open mind and an open spirit, to let go and let God catch you and take you places maybe you never imagined. To live into ways of loving and serving and giving in ways that you never even considered. To let your eyes get filled with hope. To love and serve. Faith. How might you let go tomorrow? Amen.